Okay, welcome back. I hope you're coming back. I hope you saw part one of my 2026 predictions. If you didn't, I recommend you go back and see that because it gives a framework for the overview of what is I'm going to talk about here in part two. So we had part one where we talked about sort of the tens and the cycles and the completions and how those are going to, a lot of those different completions and what they're going to look like. So I'm going to touch on some of what Edgar Casey's predictions were for 2026 because he predicted a lot of really crazy things. Number one, I do think there's going to be another pandemic by the end of this year. There's going to be more illness, okay? His prediction had to do with red air, or I don't know if it was, yeah, sort of coppery skies. So there's something in the air that is making people sick and that it becomes really extreme. Okay, I don't think this is going to happen everywhere. Okay, I think there's some places it will be worse than others. And I feel, so my feeling about it is okay, I'm going to address the idea of timeline split because this isn't going to be happening in this extreme way on all timelines. I don't expect to be on the timeline where all that's happening. And I think probably if you're watching me, you're not going to be on that timeline either. Okay. And there's a few haters out there and you might be, but that's because of what you put out in the world in the past. And there's time, still a little bit of time to set yourself straight and to connect with God and to, go on the right path. So that is my take on a lot of his predictions, is that he was seeing the darkest and the worst of what's going to happen on some of the lowest timelines, the worst timelines. People who have to have that karmic retribution for their for the hatred and anger and vindictiveness and control of others that they've had in their hearts. So that timeline does have things like he predicted technologies in the oceans that were gonna be set off and start making it unsafe for any shipping to be happening. And that is something that I've been predicting for a lot of years, is that there will be an attack on the cables, the internet cables across in the oceans. There's also going to be attacks that come up on the coast. Those are actually military attacks from China, but I don't know if that's all happening in 2026. I just have seen it as a long-term thing. But my thought about and I've been saying for some weeks now, really since Christmas, that we're going to see a lot more piracy on the high seas. So cargoes, no, they're not going to be safe. Okay. Cargoes will start to get hijacked by various countries. Those cargo and like pirates, piracy on the high seas. Those cargoes will include silver. They'll include, precious metals, right? And goods and services, right? So we're going to have a real hard time when it comes to our supply chain. And you're going to need to, and you're going to want to start setting up more local supply, more local community resources, more local types of food systems that are local, that are close, that are just about your town. Hopefully you're in a smaller town because those are going to be better places to be. So those are some of his predictions. I'm not going into the others. He had a lot more, but there's big endings in the political space, and there's also conflict. He's predicting big wars. And that's definitely in the backdrop on some of the timelines. I think that every timeline will have some element of that, but it will not touch everyone. Again, the timeline is about your frequency. It's about whether you're working from a heart-centered vibration, whether you're coming from a good place for other people, towards other people, or not. And that's the karma, okay, is the timeline. And that's how reality is splitting. It's going through splits. And we're going to have major events this year that show that split. And that's going to be something to do with the idea of a 3 days of darkness or something like that, which, the first one was supposed to happen before Christmas in 2025 and it didn't happen. So, I don't know the exact timeline on that, but I do know that these are warnings to get things straight, get straight with God, basically. And I'm not going to say it in a religious, biblical kind of way, because you're going to see some really spectacular fails and scandals around these religious organizations and entities that haven't got a thing to do with God. Okay. So there's, a lot of that. There's a lot of hypocrisy, but there's also real, genuine spirituality, which may or may not be connected to any kind of church or religion. Okay. So be aware that that split is going to be made more clear as well this year. So yes, you can expect to see those exposures and those people who are connected to these PDF file situations coming to be exposed. That's going to start happening in the, religious institutions. Also in long term, I don't even know how to say this. Well, let's just say the royal family. All right. Royal families around the world, the fake ones, actually, they've stolen the monarchies from real bloodlines. Some of this is going to start to come out. Some of the stuff that's that has to do with the bloodlines and all that's another subject. Anyway, there's going to be some biological evidence and things like that that's going to come out. Really kind of interesting. But crypto, what's going to happen with crypto is that we're going to see exceedingly high volatility. We're going to see massive run up, massive crash, massive run ups, massive crash, massive run up, massive, huge volatility. So the question here is just getting your timing right and having a right strategy around all that. So crypto is going to have some major changes. There will be some coins that absolutely make spectacular, unbelievable gains. Bitcoin, of course, will go up quite a bit. I think by the end of this year, my feeling by the end of this year, even with a run up and a crash and a run up and maybe even a second crash before the end of this year, we will still see Bitcoin above $200,000 by the end of the year and potentially much higher than that. Okay. And other coins like my favorite Bitcoin Cash could be on its way to catching up. Okay. But the timing is going to be the big deal this year. Okay. And that, of course, is what I specialize in my members area, is looking at the timing for these things that are going to happen. So there's going to be some really major shifts in the financial system. And there'll be a lot of opportunities for setting up new systems that work for your local community, especially in a small scale, like where you're setting up, like I said, food systems and community systems where there's, you just bring the clothes and there's clothes for people if they need them or whatever, whatever it is, things that your community needs. Okay. Firewood, if you're in that kind of climate, whatever is needed is going to be in the community centers. People are going to be starting to set those things up, and that's going to be really important and really helpful as we move forward. There will be a lot of people who are attracted out of the old system and into what people are doing, that is about mutual contribution and mutual support on a group level. And I'm not talking about communes. I know about communes. They didn't work. I was there as a kid. Not that. Something else. Okay, something built that is not about some egomaniac guy who's going to have sex with everybody, man, woman, or child, on the property. All right, so that's not going to work. Okay, that's what we're going away from. So yeah, that's not happening. There's going to be real, actual, true heart-centered community spaces. Okay, where people will be in support of each other and working towards creating their own individual creative projects, ideas, systems that work to help others. And a lot of the technologies that are going to be brought forth for humanity is not going to happen anywhere else. Okay. It's going to be safe to happen in these spaces that are going to happen, that are going to be rising up. So I would say by the end of the year, there is a complete opening of minds and a release of new information and new knowledge, right? People will really understand things in a completely different way. Really, in the first half of this year, the rollout of things like microchipping the population and the digital IDs and all of that is going to be happening. They're going to be trying to do it. And they're going to get real intense about it by the second half of the year. They're going to try with their CBDCs because I expect the dollar will collapse. When the dollar collapses, and it collapses through the mechanism of the rest of the world sending all the treasuries back, which I've been predicting for years and years. So when the dollar does go down and it collapses and loses all of its value is basically what it will boil down to. That is when they're going to start coming out with the CBDCs, the attempted replacement currency, right? We're going to give you a universal basic income, blah, blah, blah. You're so desperate, you can't get food. You need to take our system. It's a fake. It's a lie. It's a fraud. Okay. Don't do it. Not giving anybody any financial advice, but it's a lie. You're being lied to. And there will be, I talked about the Antichrist rolling out. And that's also so in Edgar Casey's predictions for 2026. I didn't know that it was 2026. I would say likely yes, because it will be set up in connection to these CBDCs, the fake, the universal currency, universal basic income, whatever that they bring out. They're going to say it's not a CBDC. It will be a CBDC. I don't care what they call it. It's a CBDC. They can use stable coins as this. They will try 3 times with 3 different currencies, and essentially the public will reject every single one of them. Some people will take it, but most people will reject it. Okay, the people who take it are not on the highest timeline. Okay, but most people will reject it, and they'll make other choices. Okay, eventually there will be an acceptance of all kinds of cryptocurrencies as a part of the financial transaction ability. Okay, you'll be able to do transactions with your value. Okay, so those things are going to rise, and they're going to rise a lot. But like I said, there's crashes and burns and rises and scary things going on in the crypto market. So be careful and be aware. Okay. The dollar, because the dollar's collapsing, you don't really want to hold your value in that. You would want to hold your value in precious metals, is what my take is. I'm not, can't give you financial advice, but the dollar's going to go down. Precious metals are going to continue to go up. So by the end of the year, in 2026, the end of this year, there will be very separate bubbles of experience that people are having. Okay. Some people will be having extremely difficult experiences. And when I say that the karma is bad, it's like, it's horrifying, the things that I've been shown, not just horrifying. I wouldn't wish these on my worst enemy. Seriously, there's nobody I would wish these things on, even though I believe there are horrible people who should not be allowed to participate in the world with the rest of us who are good people. But the type of horror that's going to happen to the really, really bad people on the earth is vicious. It's like hollow, sunken faces, sunken eyes, just almost like they're just skin and bones, and they're in a like almost like zombies, like trying to get something that they need. Okay, whether it's food or water. Casey talks about it with the water, but it's not going to be good. Okay, he talks about huge droughts in 2026, and I do think that will happen in areas, but there's something that's going on there with the transhumanism that's going to be really hard to watch, I think. But like I said, some people will be in that experience and others won't. This is definitely a year for spiritual reckoning. If you need to get yourself straight, I highly recommend do it while there's still time, because things are not going to be good. If you're still here, though, if you're still watching me, probably you're not in that category, right? You're probably not that person who's been PDF filing and stuff like that. So those people, those secrets, though, they're all coming out. It's all coming out. It's all going to come out in the big flood, especially after the dollar dies. Then the information. And in fact, eventually there will be an area of the internet that's going to be an archive of this. It's like the Hall of Records for the horrors, almost like the Holocaust Museum in Germany. There's a Holocaust Museum. It's so you can go and see what it is, but it's going to be one of these things where going into that area, you're going to need some sort of like bracing yourself, psychological preparation, understanding what you're going to see, and maybe not seeing all of it, but seeing enough to really understand what really happened. So there's no denying it. There will be no denying it. It's certainly not in the real timeline. Okay. The lower timelines, I don't know if they're going to deny it or they're going to keep doing it in some timelines, whatever, it's going to be pretty brutal for them in that timeline. There is a judgment that's going to be insane and horrible. Also this year, there will be some big changes that are achieved even by the current administration, around the housing situation, the housing market, that's going to make it possible for more transactions to happen and make it possible for more people to get homes. And this is mainly going to rise out of things that happen after the dollar collapse. So it's one of these things where there's going to have to do something to make it possible for a lot of people to be able to pick up places, properties, so they have places to live and things like that. Those who have some assets are going to be able to get a lot with those assets. So silver, gold, these things are going to be able to get you a lot more property than you might even imagine now. It's just a matter of holding out long enough to set yourself up to succeed. And also, if you're going to be doing anything with the banks while they're still around, because they're going to be, a lot of them will be going under, you're going to want to just have to set it up so that you can succeed, so that you can use credit in a way that helps you as things are changing, as things are falling apart, as banks are collapsing. Credit's not necessarily going to hurt you if you get credit at the right time in the banks, because if the dollar collapses, then that credit suddenly, whatever the payment is, becomes really tiny, especially if the assets go high up in value. Then suddenly it's almost nothing to pay these things off. And that's where we're headed. So the key here is, I mean, just the big takeaway is own some silver, right? Have some silver, have silver in your own possession. Do not trust it in those vaults or anywhere. Don't trust it with anybody else. Have it yourself. Definitely do not have that paper stuff, because it's not that the COMEX is going to hit a brick wall. It's going to go offline. It's going to go kaput. Same is going to happen with the stock market. These are not real value. These are not things that are going to sustain or survive or make it through the year. All right. So that is why you want silver in your own possession. Okay. And cryptos, you can have cryptos in your own possession, but expect those to be spectacularly volatile, and either be willing to hold on to them through all that volatility or prepared to buy things when they're low. Just have a strategy for it. Okay. That would be my take. So that's the overall, prediction. And of course, yes, there will be conflicts. There will be war. There will be more heat in, Ukraine, between Germany, Ukraine, Russia, more heat with, and Europe is going to have a lot of problems. More heat with, and the housing markets around the world are going to be really devastated, actually. But there's more heat with, Taiwan and Russia going after Taiwan and the microchip centers. There's going to be more heat with the Middle East. There's more heat in Israel. There's going to be more heat. And these things are going to be flashpoints for larger things. Also, another thing that I was shown that I forgot to say earlier is something very major is going to happen in New York City. There's going to be some sort of a major event. And it's not like a BOMB. It's more like it's a disaster of some kind. Okay. And it's going to be pretty devastating. And it might even, I don't know if it's a flood or an earthquake or something that causes a big, sort of in the city. Okay. There could be a big boom that's a result of whatever's happening. That could be some sort of a transformer going off, because there's electrical that could get messed up by whatever this is that I'm seeing. But something big happening in New York this year. It's not going to take New York completely down, but it's going to cause major disruption in New York City. So those are the specific downloads, along with the idea of that militia that I talked about. There's a lot more, and I'll give you more information as the year unfolds and more stuff comes to my consciousness. I'm not giving everything at once. Nobody knows everything, right? So, I'm sure there are other people. Everyone has their predictions. There's a lot going on. I specifically did not watch other people's stuff, except for the Dolores Cannon, Edgar Cayce stuff, just to get a context, because they are kind of long-term have been really sort of the backdrop of accuracy in the prediction world. And now I might look at some other people's stuff, but generally I try not to. I have not watched other people's stuff because I want to be bringing it clean from what I'm getting from my guides. So that is it. Make sure you subscribe. There's a lot more coming. Of course, I do my crypto astrology forecast every single Tuesday. I do my astrology forecast every week for the coming week. And these can give you a good overview and a pulse on what to expect and what's coming. So that's it. I will talk to you guys later. Have a beautiful week. Have a beautiful year. I hope and I wish for you that the wheel is going up, that you are getting your 10 of Pentacles, you're getting your 10 of Cups. I'm wishing you 10,000x, and I wish you all good things. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.